If you've ever wondered what it would take to go from working with mainframes and Windows servers to transition into cybersecurity and blockchain technology, then I have the interview for you. And yes, that seems very specific, but it's interesting nonetheless. My guest today is Satpal Dhaliwal, and he's a Quantic graduate with a wealth from 20 years of experience in the business. And he started out, as I said, in the early days working with mainframes, and now he is working with blockchain technology and cybersecurity. His journey is pretty fascinating, and believe me, he's gathered some stories along the way. So we're going to deep dive in his career. We're going to discuss this ever-evolving, changing landscape of cybersecurity, and we're going to touch on Web3 development and blockchain, and of course, we're going to find out how the Quantic MBA informed his career changes and most recently his opportunities. So sit back, grab yourself a coffee or another drink, whatever you prefer, and enjoy the interview, and I'll be back afterwards with a little summary.
Yeah. I'm very curious, if I may, about your background, because you seem to be now doing a lot, and let's say for the last 10 years, doing cybersecurity type of thing. Yeah. But I mean, when we were young, cybersecurity didn't exist. So I'm just curious how you got into that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's a great question, actually, because it wasn't something that was top of mind when I did get into it. I've been in enterprise software and hardware for probably 20 odd years. So started off with Data General back in the day, pre-sales for these large mainframe units that we're selling, just as they were moving over to Windows. So Windows NT, whatever was taking over. I have a Windows background, so it put me in a good position to help support that growth. We were then bought by a storage company, blah, blah, blah. So there's an enterprise background. But what happens is, sorry, I just need to do some, 1 second. What happens is that obviously you realize then that the space is changing. So the company I was working for was going through a bit of a shift, and mobile devices were just coming up. So I basically moved into what we call mobility. I think mobility means something different in different parts of the world, but for me, that was Blackberry at the time.
Right. So when would that have been?
That's 2003.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's basically when Blackberry first came to the UK.
Right.
So almost day one, I was involved in mobility. So setting up enterprise software for legal, for finance companies, getting them on board. And it was one of these easy wins, right? So you put something in, they didn't care about security. There were no passwords on the devices. Nobody cared about anything. You just put it in and they got their email, right? But as we went through the sort of next 10, 15 years, you start getting regulation in, you start getting rules, and not just external, but internal as well, about how you can use company data. And that's where the cybersecurity piece starts coming in, because actually the stuff that we're doing starts getting governed, starts getting audited, starts getting regulated. And we need to then put stuff in place as well. So people start thinking about the data that they have on these devices, realize that you're basically taking company information with you anywhere. And as part of what I did for Blackberry, I used to run a professional services team, probably about 20, 30 people doing a lot of implementation stuff. Blackberry bought a cybersecurity company, thinking it's a new way forward, thinking this is a must-have for our sort of services capability. And I inherited quite a large team of cybersecurity professionals to go and sell, implement, etc., blah, blah, blah. So that's how I got into it. And that's also how Blackberry got into that space as well. So it became more of a cybersecurity services company at that time. That's probably I'd say about 10 years ago now, something like that.
Yeah, interesting, because I mean, when I started out, let's say maybe when I went to work for a large sports betting company in 2000, and when the only stuff we ever thought about with security was, preventing attacks from the outside, and so when that kind of evolved, and I remember I had my own company that did the first ever real money betting from a mobile phone. This is back in 2001. It was just horrible. We were way, way, way too early. But I mean, there was no security there. I mean, if you had your phone, you could bet however much money was associated with your wallet or whatever. So, and it was a long time before security kind of went the other way. I mean, always we thought about preventing stuff coming in.
Yeah, and I think and we did this when we first started up with Blackberry. The shift came from where the network perimeter sits, right? And I think mobility and the ability to have everything on your laptop, the proliferance of things like Dropbox and Box coming on board a few years later, all that meant was that people thought, I don't need to be sitting at my desk anymore to do my work, right? It starts with email, but BlackBerry then quickly shifted to storage of files, to attachments, the ability to open attachment. And that happened in the early 2000s. And I think, the wave that you're riding, I think is along a similar line where you don't need to be in a betting shop. You don't need to be within what you would consider a secure perimeter. And that the perimeter was the big thing for us from a cybersecurity perspective, because then you've got to change the mindset. You can't stop every attack surface if you're on your own laptop or if you're on your own phone doing stuff for yourself, right, on your laptop. You're actually part of the problem. So you've got to solve it a different way. And that's why I think a lot of the cybersecurity stuff came from that sort of flexibility that was afforded to all of us.
Mm-hmm. And so is that what you're doing now?
That's where I've spent the last 20 years, but we've shifted again. So obviously talking about cybersecurity, when you join cybersecurity and a lot of the development piece we did, so I've got two parts of what I do. The first piece is the business I run is primarily focused on that cybersecurity piece and working with vendors on implementation services. So what I was doing for BlackBerry for 10, 15 years, exactly what I do now for my own consultancy company. We run across the UK and in the Middle East, offering services at a value that the vendors can't do, but with the same level of due diligence, right? So we've got people who work for those companies working for us, providing professional services. So we subcontract to these guys. That's a growth business for us, again, mainly on the cybersecurity side, because the Middle East is a growing, ever-evolving region, right? So, they always talk about Saudi Arabia being the most hacked country in the world. There's quite a few of them in the Middle East that have that. The second part is that recently we've also moved over into sort of Web3 and development on that side. So that's new. That's not related to what we were doing before. Obviously, it's cybersecurity related because a lot of blockchain technology is cybersecurity, right? Or it comes from a cybersecurity background. So that's helped us move into it quite easily. The consultancy works across that. And I thought it was a natural fit for us to grow into that. But I do see it as a separate part of the business.
So you take all that, you've got a lot of experience and done all these things, and yet now you've done an MBA.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fascinating as to why are people doing it at the time they're doing it? Because, I mean, a lot of people would turn around and say, well, what do you need an MBA for? You've been in the business for 30 years.
I think... absolutely. I think there's a couple of things that I did think about when I was at BlackBerry. So while I was actually working in the industry, I thought to myself, do I need to do an MBA now? Is it too late? Will it help my career in any way? And actually, because I'm a hiring manager as well, I didn't really look at MBAs on people's profiles as much for the roles that I was hiring for, not for the senior level roles, but for the sort of senior salespeople. A few of them had MBAs, but I'm not sure it helped them in what they were doing, right? And again, that might be naive from my side, but it wasn't something that played on mine, and I couldn't afford to take a year out or 2 years out of work to be able to do that. So I thought, like you just mentioned, experience counts for most. It's helped me in my career. I've got a lot of contacts. I don't need to really focus on that. Rightly or wrongly, that's where I thought. And then COVID hit. And I think COVID happened at exactly the same month that I got made redundant from BlackBerry. So after being 20 years in the industry, I'm sitting there at home, everybody's at home, wondering what I'm going to do with my life in a lockdown situation, right, as well. So that's when I thought, you know what, I've got all these contacts, I might as well just start the consultancy that I always wanted to do. And that's when the MBA idea came into my head again. I revisited it because then I thought, actually sitting here in my office space by myself in the middle of this environment, do I have the skills needed? Am I confident that I have the skills needed to make this work? I think there's a famous quote, and I don't want to quote it, but it's all around the knowing the knowns and the unknowns, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it was, one of the first state secretary or whatever in the US.
Yeah.
But, for me, I think it's very pertinent that you have to be confident that you have an open mind, that you do have the ability to learn, because when you run your own business, you can't sort of make those mistakes, right? And just assume that you know everything. So the MBA, I looked at the various courses around. Having just been made redundant, having just been sitting at home, an in-person sort of Oxford-based or LSE-based course wasn't going to hack it. I'm not going to pay $100,000+ for a year at a plus school, because again, I don't need it. I'm not in my 20s. I'm not going to go and work an Accenture or one of the big five or wherever you might think you need an MBA. I have no desire to do that. So I started checking for other online options, and Quantic was one of the ones that popped up on my search. I didn't know anyone who went there. It completely came out of the blue from a Google search. But the fit was looking at the various modules, looking at what I would learn as part of this course, and the time frame that I could learn it in. And that's where the sort of MBA fit in there.
Mm. So was there a thing that you said, like specifically, okay, the MBA will give me this? Was there something specific?
Yeah, so it's all front-ended for me. To start the business, your main focus has got to be, am I in the right area? Am I pricing correctly? Am I able to put the message forward? So do I hold the right brand, the right messaging? Am I able to give that elevator pitch when someone asks me, what do you do? Right. Do I know why I go after certain things? I think, when you get to a certain age and you play a lot of your life on hunches, because you've got some experience, you've got some ideas, you've got some things, and hunches aren't enough. I think a hunch is a good thing, but you've got to go and then quantify that and qualify it, right? And that's what the MBA does for me. That was one of the 3 or 4 drivers that I had, was to make sure I'm not just living my life on hunches, and I need to follow through. And there are gaps. I found it. Actually now post MBA, it absolutely helped, because there were at least half a dozen occasions I could say to you, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I forgot to do that. And it's most of it is sanity checking.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, because I've done a lot of these chats with people, and a lot of it, maybe 50-50, is the things that you learn, but also kind of not validating what you know, but giving you the inner confidence. There's a lot of stuff, and I mean, I'm in a similar situation. You go off and you do your own thing, you run your own company, and you do something. But it's like with the accounting module in Quantic, I went, oh my God, my accountant must think I'm an idiot, because I've been calling this when it's actually this.
It's a very good point.
This terminology.
Absolutely. It's a very, very good point. I think I did for a while use that word validation as well. I don't know if there's a better word for it, but it's really showing that you're looking in the right areas and that you have had the right ideas. I think that it is key to that as well. I did marketing at university 30-something years ago. And I remember some stuff that happened last week. So I did that marketing course. I had to redo it again a couple of times. I've been back over the material a couple of times just to make sure that I've picked up a couple of things around the branding side as we shift. We're just about to relaunch our website. We're just about to relaunch some of the work that we've been doing, a new brand, etc. So I went back over the course again, just to remind myself, why we do what we do. The accounting one was funny, actually. Again, it's one of the modules I failed at university. So having to do that again was quite painful. But I had to do it. You're right. You have to go through it and go, oh, God, terminology, where I'm putting things, So that definitely resonates. So it's a big part of why I did it. But also it was a good bonus as well to have out of the course.
Yeah, I think almost everybody I've talked to, on the surface, I think other people would say, why are you doing it at this point? But and everybody says the similar kind of thing. Well, there are things we don't know. And I think the more you get into it, the more you realize you don't know. And, I'm sitting here running my own thing, company, and I go, as I'm doing it, I say, I have no idea what I'm doing. And sometimes that's insecurity. Yeah. But sometimes it's actually awareness you know, but, and you go, of course, you know, as an entrepreneur, you go ahead and you do it anyway. But it is nice to have this. And it makes me wonder, because, you know, for years I thought, I don't need an MBA. They're not going to teach me in school something that I've learned in real life. And funnily enough, they are.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And I think it's a very good point you mentioned about you said use the polite word experience. I'm going to go straight for age, because I know I'm not a young cookie, as it was, but you know, there's a lot of people in their 20s, and I've had people come up to me afterwards in their 20s asking about whether the MBA is worth it or not. I thought, well, it depends what you want in your career. You know, you're at an age where you are looking at a quick boost into something, at either seniority level or with a larger firm or with a specific type of role that you know, and that's what you're using it for. It's leverage as a piece of paper. That's not what I was doing with it. It's not what I care about. I think it's probably a little bit young to do it straight out of university, but I can understand why people start doing it. But I think the real value has come. And maybe if I'd done it 10 years ago, it might have been actually more beneficial in my career as well. But yeah, it's never too late. My wife gets really annoyed. I picked up what do you call them? Like a catchphrase of one of the CEOs of a local company in Switzerland here. When he's, and I've used it about half a dozen times, and I've told him as well, is the best time to plant an oak tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
Right.
Don't put it off. You know, if you don't think you've missed something just because you've missed it, it doesn't matter. Just do it. You know, we do think a lot about, oh, I wish I'd done this. I wish I'd done that. Well, what's stopping you doing it now then?
Yeah. You know, that really annoys me when people say that. I mean, also, you know, this idea that you have to keep on learning.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you stop learning, you know, what good are you really? Because I mean, anything that the way that we were doing it 10 years ago doesn't apply now. You know, you have to learn new things. I always find it really annoying. Like, you know, I'm a software developer and I taught myself how to do it. But, you know, when people say, oh, well, of course you can do that, you're good with computers. And I'm like, I didn't come out of the womb. You know, I mean, we didn't even have computers when I was a kid. So this whole thing to say you're good with computers, you know how I got that way? I used them and I learned.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that people will, you know, this whole idea about, oh, you know, you're good with this, you're good with that. It's like, holy cow.
Well, it's a really, really good point, because my wife asked me yesterday about why, she goes, how did you learn how to change a tire in a car? So, because I did it. Yeah. I just got the jack out of the back of the car and I changed it. I mean, I may not have got it right the first time, but that's how I learned it. Just get on with it. You know, my dad's 80-something years old. He uses a mobile phone like a kid. He's he's WhatsApping, seeing pictures, he's emailing. I mean, just because he does.
Yeah. It's a mindset thing. I mean, I hate to use that word mindset because it's such a buzzword now, but it is really a mindset thing.
It is. And you mentioned something there about you're doing software development. So did that come out of a desire to learn software development, or did it come out of a requirement because you had to do it?
Well, I was a professional musician, right? And then one day I said, you know what? It would be nice to earn some money. And instead of doing this. And so I thought, oh, you know, I was not completely naive to software development, but really I didn't know anything. And there was an ad in the paper back in the, this is dating me. There was an ad in the newspaper for a job for a Macintosh developer. Yeah. And I said, you know what? I have a Macintosh. So I just phoned them up and I said, oh, I can do that. And luckily for me, the interview, they knew less than I did. And they hired me. And I sat in that job in a cubicle and taught myself how to write. Here we are.
Sorry.
God knows what happened there. I think that was actually StreamYard that went down.
Yeah, I checked my phone and the internet was still up.
Yeah.
But again, that was only afterwards. First, I thought it might be the storm. We got a little bit of a storm here.
Yeah.
Usually it's okay, but it's not usually.
Okay.
That.
Anyway, so yes, I taught myself. So it was out of necessity. And I mean, I was just that kind of person, you know? So, yeah. So, yes, that's just the way I went about it, you know?
But obviously, you got enough out of it that you stayed with it. So you still run a company.
Yeah, I still write software.
Yeah, you still write software. Okay, excellent. And can I ask you, because obviously my first instinct was it's all front end about the MBA and the benefit for me of taking that and doing that now. What did you find from it? Did you say you're still doing the MBA?
I'm still in.
Yeah. Okay.
But for me, I wouldn't take the MBA if I wasn't running my own business, you know, and I've been doing that for 20 years, you know, doing startups, and some fail, some success, and all that. I don't think if I was doing that, I would ever have taken an MBA. I don't think that let me say, the EMBA.
Yeah.
Perhaps the MBA is of value to somebody who's in a lower level thing. But the EMBA, for me, was pitched exactly right. It was for people like me who are running their own business and needed that information. And I do agree. I think it's the most of the value from what I've done and from what I see will be coming up is in business formation.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, we're not going to become accountants, hopefully. And, you know, we're not going to become economists and all of that. All of our benefit is to talk to other people and know what they're talking, be able to understand what they're talking about, and to be able to form our own company and know that it's not going to sink day one.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe know enough to be able to talk to people to raise money to move on.
Exactly. And whether it's raising money or, to me, it's scale. You know, I want to be able to grow this. I don't want to be an accountant, like you said. It's not my role to do that. I'd be rubbish at it anyway, right? I had no desire to do something I'm very bad at. I enjoy the front end side of the business, creating it, starting it, scaling it, and getting to a certain size. I mean, I might get bored of it afterwards, but that's what I'm after. So yes, I agree with that. That's exactly where I also saw the value, and where it was positioned to me. And I think there has been another bonus out of it in that the network side of things really worked out well for me. I think I've had a few engagements with people at the conferences I've met, at the local meetups in the UK, that are probably bear fruit in some business ventures as well. So, you know, we've got a couple of things that are starting off. It's quite interesting. It's a side bonus that I never expected.
Sorry. And yes, for me, that was part of it. And I won't lie I mean, I live in northern Japan. I'm in the middle of nowhere. And that's great for when I'm running my business and, you know, we're doing a thing. But if I want to do something new, which I do, or if I want to expand, which I'm not so sure, but if I want to do something new, who am I going to do it with? I mean, that rice farmer over there is not going to start an online business with me, you know? I don't think. But
we already have something.
You know, yeah, he might already have. Yeah. So that was my thing. I needed a network. You know, and I know lots of people, that's true, but there's a difference, I think, you know, you're kind of going through a crucible together when you're doing the MBA. And I think that builds some formation, and you get to talk to people on a certain level that you wouldn't. Like I wouldn't have met or talked to you about this like this if not for the MBA.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's been a really nice, and again, I wasn't expecting it this way. Having started it in COVID, on a laptop by myself, not knowing any.
I think the gods are against us today, that's for sure. But yes, the reason I started to do this, you know, in talking to people, for instance, is that I thought, well, you know, I decided when I went into this, I'm going to get everything out of it that I can.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I love the approach. I think, you know, you've probably caught on to something where living in such you live in a remote location. Me, I'm doing this remotely. Obviously, I started off in COVID, and we had to find a way. So, I was really pleased when we had the first meetup in London. We got quite an energetic organizer, Nikki, I mean, I think he works for Quantic now. I don't know. But he was happy to get funding from them for local events, get us working. Obviously, living in a big city is a little bit easier for us to get 40, 50, 100 people to an event. So that was brilliant. There's some really good guys there. But the conference was probably the biggest thing. I think the first conference, I didn't invest enough time in it. But the second one in Athens, I'm still on the WhatsApp group. We've still got quite a few people that I know. And two of them were the ones we're starting a venture with in Eastern Europe. I don't know if you've been to any of the conferences.
No, I haven't. I'm thinking to go. I'm going to be over in North America when the Chicago one happens.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's what I'm planning on going to, actually. I miss Bangkok. They put Bangkok at a time when there's a festival on, so the prices for tickets are crazy.
Yeah.
It's in school holidays here, so which means that the prices coming out of London are quite crazy, even though my kids are too old to worry about. But the prices are, so I missed that. I think I'll end up in Chicago.
Yeah.
There's a couple of people who are in Athens who are going to be there as well.
Yeah,
so
I'm hoping to make it.
It'd be nice to meet you.
Yeah, great. Anyway, I really appreciate you taking the time.
No, it's been great talking to you. It was great to meet you as well. Well, I say in person, but on here, on this platform. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, such a fascinating, also so many different people from so many different places in the world. The thing I love about Quantic actually is because it's so global.
Yeah.
I think that's an advantage over, let's say, doing it, at some physical location.
Yeah.
We get such a diversity.
Yeah, even the people I had with my the group that we did the last project with. I mean, they were in 10 different time zones. I think it was insane, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Phil. It really was a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to edit this down, and maybe in a couple of weeks I'll be putting it up there, but I'll let you know.
Well, there you go. Thanks, as always, to Sat for taking the time to chat with me, despite our ironic technological difficulties throughout the interview. It was really interesting to me. It's always great to talk with somebody who has, kind of a long-standing experience in the business like I do, but in a very different light from me. So if you're interested in an MBA, of course, I recommend the Quantic MBA. I'm not here to shill for it. If you don't want it, you don't want it. It makes no difference to me, but I'm finding it really interesting and learning so much about the proper way to examine your business. I'll be back with some more interviews, and if you're interested in software development, stick around, like, subscribe, bell notification, because I have a whack of videos coming on about that. And of course, the merging of the two, software development and entrepreneurship. See you soon.